Whenever we get a new horse here in the rescue, the first thing that happens is every horse is worried about their position, their rank. There's a first, second, third, fourth, fifth place right there. And so when the new horse comes in, obviously first, second, third, they don't want to lose their position. But more importantly, the guy on the bottom is thinking, this is my opportunity to move up. So they engage. So you can imagine we get a lot of interaction between horses when they first come in. That's not always that friendly. We just took a new horse in, Darla. Darla, where are you, baby? Baby. Darla. Can you say hi? Say hi? Yep, there's Darla. There she is. Now, Darla just came in, and as always, as per usual, there was a lot of interplay, because, the top ones didn't want to be the top, and the bottom one wanted to move up, and so she's going to find herself somewhere in the middle. She's not as aggressive as some of the other ones, but that's a thing. And it made me think about the exact same thing happens at work with your employees. They're always thinking, they're ranking themselves. They're always ranking their, whether it's by position, whether it's by performance, whatever that might be, right? Tell them, Darla, I need your help on this one, okay? Whether it's by position, whether it's by performance, whatever that might be, that's what we're looking at. Now, in this situation, it reminded me when I was working on my PhD, we had to do a lot of different scenarios, tests, and so on to see things. And one of the things that we did was this self-esteem test. And what it taught me was that an employee draws a majority of their self-esteem from their job. They're not supposed to. It's not how we were designed. It's not how we were created. It shouldn't be that way. But it ends up being that that's what actually happens. So if I have a good job, I feel good about myself. If I have a bad job, I feel bad about myself. If I have a good day at work, I feel good about myself. If I have a bad day at work, I feel bad about myself. It's all connected and interplayed. When I was one study that we did was I went into a third grade classroom, into a first grade classroom, or third grade classroom, at second grade and the first grade. I went into all three grades. I had to jog my memory there. And what we did was we made these signs, one that said doctor, one that said lawyer, one that said teacher, one that said farmer, one that said garbage man. And we would get 5 volunteers, and I would hang the signs around the volunteers and next. And I would say, okay, guys, now line up in order of most important. Who's the most important? Who's the least important? And so on. And what was fascinating to watch, as we would see, is that there'd be this scenario where the doctor, everybody knew the doctor was the most important. So he would go get in first place and no one would challenge him. And the lawyer and the teacher, there'd be some discussion because, you're in a classroom with teachers who are high revered. But usually that would always work it out. And then the farmer knew, well, gosh, I'm not as important as a doctor or lawyer or teacher, but I'm certainly more important than a garbage man. At least that was his thought. And then that's what they would do. So we would see this dynamic play out. We started in third grade, and then we moved into second grade and first grade, and it played out exactly the same way every time. But the one that stuck out the most to me, it was the first time that we did it. We hung the little signs on everybody, and I asked them to line up, and I noticed that the one who had the garbage man sign on it went over and sat down and wouldn't even get in line. He was upset. So when I go over and talk to him, he's like crying, right? There's like tears in his eyes. And he's like, please, sir, don't make me be the garbage man. I want to be something important. I don't want to be the garbage man. And so right then and there at third grade, we saw that already they're starting to draw their self-esteem from their job. Already they're starting to rank themselves and look at that. And so that's the reason why I went down into second and then down into first, because we were trying to see when does this actually start? And the same dynamic happened with the first graders as well. And I would change the signs out. Sometimes I might say nurse. Sometimes we might say rancher. Sometimes we might say construction worker. We tried different dynamics, and it worked just the way you thought it would work. The people who, the first place was always the first place. There would be some interplay between second, third, fourth always kind of felt comfortable in fourth, and then fifth always knew they were fifth. They always knew they were last in that ranking order. So I want you to think this week about this. How do your employees feel? Where are they at? Now, if you're doing those quarterly check-ins, if you're doing those regular check-ins, and not just talking performance, but talking about the person. Remember, the person's more important than the position. That's what creates longevity. That's what creates loyalty. That's what reduces turnover. But if I'm really doing that, and I'm thinking, what's going on in my employees' minds? Watch for this dynamic, and I promise you, you're going to see it. That they are ranking themselves, right? Not just by sales numbers and performance. They're ranking themselves by what they think, who's the best, who's the favorite. There could be rankings on favorites. There could be rankings on tenure. There could be rankings. Usually the rankings are on job title, and that's a big thing, and that's a problem, right? With it. But if you're the type of company that's trying to build that culture where there are no small parts, only small actors, you need to pay attention to this dynamic because it started when they were in first grade.